are going to tie up a gray drake Happy Meal. Yeah, I don't name them all the time, so the Happy Meal. We're going to do this all pretty much in a gray color, and that's why I think it's the gray drake. So I'm just using a size 16 TroutFly hook, regular standard TroutFly hook here in the vise. And we'll get ourselves our thread layer down back to where the bend of the hook is located. Don't want to go too much further than that so my materials don't end up bending around backwards. Looks like I got some wax on there, which is good, but not in clumps. So let's get some of those clumps out of there. We're going to bring our thread back up here near the eye, leaving ourselves a little bit of space. We're going to tie in an elk hair wing. So I've cleaned and stacked just a sparse bit of elk hair. This happens to be bleached elk hair. And I'm going to want to tie that in. Again, this is going to be a standing up wing here, so we're going to tie this in right about here. I'm going to take a loose wrap with my thread for the first go round, and I'm going to start cinching it down as I pull up, and that will splay those individual hairs out just fine. That's what we wanted to do. And then we're just going to take some fairly tight turns going backwards. As I get those done, I'm going to try to hold on to those a little bit. I'm going to come in here with my scissors and cut this off at an angle. We'll do a little bit of trimming. So once we have this kind of cleaned up a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and move my thread backwards a little bit. And I'm going to use some light gray antron, and it's going to be the shuck on this fly. We'll just tie that in right up here at the top. And I'm going to want to bring that just right up against where I cut off that elk hair. And that'll help us build some of that taper and some of that bulk. And I'm going to hold that tail or that shuck up just so that I make sure that I keep it on the top of the shank of the hook here. All the way through the back. Once I've gone that far, now we can come in with our scissors and we'll grab that excess antron here and clip it off. And the shuck I'm going to want to be, about the gap of the hook. It's not a very long piece. This is just representing the skin of the bug. This is an emerger pattern that's just, in theory, just coming off the water. So we're going to use a turkey quill on the body here. So I'm just going to put a tiny little dab of super glue or cement here, just to make this a little bit more durable. Turkey quill tends to be pretty delicate material. So I'm going to tie this in with the darker edge facing downwards. Just get a thread wrap or two here. Be careful not to just crank down on this, especially where you're going to start your abdomen, because it'll cut right through your turkey quill, and then you're going to have to do it all over again. So I'll be pretty gentle right through that area anyway. I can crank on it now as I move my way back up here a little bit. And then I'm just going to find the little bit of extra quill that got left over. Tag end, I guess. We'll cut that off. Just tighten all of that down a little bit. Make sure I've got a nice fairly smooth taper for this quill to travel up. And then I'm going to get that quill in our hackle plier here. I'm just going to hold that straight up, and I'm going to start get that first turn right around the base. I always say that, but it's really important. And from there, I'm just going to let this start climbing its way up, and you'll see that this turkey quill is going to make just a nice ribbing. And sometimes your thread will decide it wants to come with you, and you may have to just pause for a minute, make that adjustment. Often I'll just throw a half hitch into my thread just to keep it from climbing up the hook the way that just kind of did. Let's go ahead and take one more wrap. With that, I'm going to take my thread over the top of my quill just to make sure I've got it nice and locked into place, and then we can go ahead and let go with our hackle pliers. We can come in with our scissors and cut the excess off. So with that kind of there in place, tightened down, I'm going to bring my thread backwards a little bit because we're going to put a thorax right about here. We're going to just create a nice kind of thicker thorax section here. I'm just going to use some Superfine in a light gray that just matches the colors that we're using here. Trying not to screw up that too much. Our elk hair decided it wanted to go and bend backwards, and I really didn't want it to do that, so I didn't let it. So I'm going to take a look at it from side to side. I think we're going to add just a tiny little bit more because I do want that thorax to be a little bit more pronounced than it is. Nice thing with dubbing is it's really easy, it's cheap, and you can go back and get yourself another helping in no time at all. There we go. That's more like it. So we've got our nice thick thorax going on there. So we are going to lightly hackle this fly, and I've prepared a nice hackle feather appropriately sized for 16 here. I want to tie that in where we're going to want to start those turns. Take one wrap over this side of it. Try to bring that stem straight up and down and get a wrap on the opposite side of it. And really that's one of the tricks to, at least that I'm trying to figure out slowly but surely, one of the tricks to getting a nice clean hackle when you start wrapping it. So I'm just going to wrap backwards a few wraps back to where I want that to start, and then I'm going to take a couple of wraps up towards that elk hair. Once I get right about in that vicinity, I'm just going to go ahead and turn my vise again, and we're going to cut off the excess of the stem of that hackle feather that we used. So now with the hackle tied in, I'm just going to grab my hackle plier, get that attached, hold this straight up and down, and take one good turn right back up against that dubbing ball of a thorax that we had there. And I'm just going to take pretty tight touching turns of this material. It'll be fairly sparse, probably just one more wrap here. And with that wrap, I'm just going to take my thread, going over the top of the end of that hackle piece there, so we're locking it in place. Pull that kind of tight, take another wrap or two, and then I can release that from my hackle plier. And I'll just come in, turn my vise like I always do, and look really close at where that hackle is stopped. We'll clip it off nice and close. So from here, what we're going to do is we're just going to grab this elk hair and some of the hackle. I'm going to pull it straight back, so I'm revealing the eye of my hook here. And I'm just going to take a few wraps here. So with everything pulled kind of back a little bit, we're going to go ahead and we'll whip finish this. Trying not to trap too much junk as we go through here. Of course, I will trap a few things. That's just what I do. It's in my nature. Go ahead and pull that tight. I'm going to go ahead and turn my vise and cut that thread free. We'll clean up and we'll be right back. And there you have it. Great emerger pattern. The Happy Meal. We've gone with the gray look here. You can change this up by changing different colors. This could also be a good mimic for a caddis as well. Great pattern. Give it a shot.